Yasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada I am Vishnu Padamans Rajakacharya Sabhasi Smadesi Bhaktivedanta Samsara Prabhupada Ki Jai Amacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Ram Sugho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopika Shama Kunda Radha Kuddi Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadiptam Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Padnanda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Go Premanandi All glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. So it's a great fortune today to have the association of His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj. Hari Bol! His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj every week is coming and taking a series on Nectar of Instruction here. Last time Maharaj spoke on verse number 5, which was such an important verse, and it shows about how to respect different types of devotees. And Maharaj was saying that actually this is the Kanishthas we can respect in the mind because he has at least chanting the holy name, although he does not have faith or he may have only bhakti abhas, not proper shraddha. He doesn't want to associate with devotees, doesn't take instructions even if given to him. Then Maharaj said that those who are seriously chanting and seriously practicing bhakti, for them we should give physical respects and also offer praise and other forms of respect also. So this is a madhyama. And to great devotees, we should associate with them and we should take advantage of their association. Those who are, they are very knowledgeable and advanced, and therefore by their association we can also take advantage. So Maharaj was explaining then about the Diksha. Maharaj showed us that actually there are 3 parts of the Diksha, and in ISKCON it gets mixed up, so therefore that was there. And Maharaj also said that actually the most important part of the Diksha or any process is that we take the Siksha properly and we respect the Guru by following their instructions. So today Maharaj will continue ahead to the verse number 6. Let's welcome His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj by 3 times loudly chanting Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
text 5, it talks about Diksha here, and of course we've equated this more or less with the Madhyam Adhikari, that we offer respects to them, physically speaking, whereas with the Kanishta we can more or less, or those who are lower, we can, even those who are doing mixed bhakti or whatever, we can mentally offer them respects, but we show greater respect to those who are initiated. Now, of course, then I analyzed the word diksha, etc. So that diksha, of course, is the panchatric diksha in the technical sense of the term. But we should not conclude that, therefore, everyone that has that diksha is automatically a madhyamadhikari. Or we cannot also say that if you don't have diksha, you're not a madhyamadhikari. We cannot say that also. So it's not that automatically diksha means madhyamadhikari. So the madhyamadhikari is not a formal designation by ritual or whatever, or by mantra even, but it's rather the ability of the devotee to accept devotees, take knowledge from them, and understand the process of devotional service, and then treat the different devotees in different ways. So that's the definition. So, of course, we can take Diksha in a broader sense, like Prabhupada says, Diksha means to commit yourself to Hare Krishna, or mentally accept, the process, even he'll say, or just chant Hare Krishna as Diksha also. So we can say it in a more informal way or a subjective way, that Diksha means serious commitment to the process of bhakti as well. But of course, and normally we don't. But sometimes even Prabhupada uses that. He initiated the people into chanting Hare Krishna, and says in Chaitanya Charitamrita or whatever like that. So, though Hare Krishna, you don't take initiation for that. So, in a general sense, the Diksha can also simply mean serious commitment as well. Which means, of course, it's again subjective. It's the person himself has a serious commitment to practicing pure bhakti, and therefore he treats the devotees accordingly, like that. So therefore, there's not just Diksha as the ceremony that qualifies one for getting respect. Or we cannot say that since Diksha means second initiation, we don't have to respect the people who have first initiation, only the second initiation, whatever. So it's those who are seriously committed. In any case, the main idea is to understand that the real devotee makes some distinctions in order to advance in devotional service. So he has to accept teachings from another person, so therefore he has to accept the senior, and he has to follow his instructions and take his teachings. And with equals, then he shares those teachings, and they discuss them and whatever, and they act in a friendly manner. And he shows mercy to those who are less advanced by giving them instructions. So that's the basic idea of the Madhyama. So on that basis he makes distinctions. Whereas the Uttama does not make distinctions. He treats everybody equally in one sense. So he's even beyond preaching, we can say, in most cases. Okay, any question there on the Diksha process and all that? We covered that yesterday. Of course, another point to make is that within the Gaudiya Sampradaya, the Diksha process continued, even though Lord Chaitanya himself does, usually when he's preaching, he just says, chant the holy name, and Harinam Eva Kevalam, etc. So that's the main process, which doesn't require Diksha. So there's an emphasis there, and that, of course, is carried on. So generally, the sadhana for the devotees is Harinam, chanting the holy name. So when you get initiation, what is your vow? Hare Krishna, Nam. It's not chanting other mantras. And in fact, generally, you get that as second initiation, and then how long do you chant that for? 5 minutes. So comparatively, the emphasis is upon chanting Hare Krishna, not on the Diksha. Even though we can say the mantras are the same, equal in one sense. They're equal because the mantras also have the name of Krishna in, so they're nam-atmaka. So in that sense, they're not different. Still, the name is considered more powerful. And even that is illustrated in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Gopu Kumar got his Diksha mantras, and that he chanted only one mantra from his guru, and the guru didn't even explain what the mantra was, and he disappeared. So he chanted this for a few lifetimes of Brahma, a few days of Brahma, until he got up to Vaikuntha. And then sooner or later, I think the Vishnu Dutas or Narada Muni told him, if you want to get to Goloka, then you have to do Harinam. So that indicates that it's even more powerful. So then he chanted Harinam, and he went to Goloka, finally. That was it, and his goal was achieved. So he achieved the final result by Harinam. So Harinam is more powerful than those mantras. So rightly speaking then, I guess we can say backwards though, that Lord Chaitanya emphasized the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra more than anything else. So very, very powerful. So that is prominent in our Sampradaya. So then the question will arise, then why do we emphasize Diksha? And why, of course, it's there, and it's a process for deity worship, so we do deity worship, and to do that deity worship we need the Pancharadrik mantras, so therefore we take Diksha. So that's the official reason. Still, why there's such an emphasis upon the Diksha, so therefore we have lines of Diksha traced down. And if you don't have a Diksha line, you're considered nonsense. And so that's been the general attitude within the Gaudiya Sampradaya, also among the serious devotees, whatever. So again, the Diksha gets emphasized, in spite of the fact that Hare Krishna is the main sadhana. So it's looks a little bit of a contradiction there. Of course, one reason for the secondary, I mean not secondary reason, but another reason for the Diksha line was through those Diksha lines also they carried out their Siddha Pranali and their Raganuga sadhana through the gurus as well. So it was simultaneously that, and that's all individual with these sampradayas. So therefore the Diksha lines got emphasized for that reason. Okay, so that's another reason. So anyway, but then with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he decided to cut the line, he didn't want to trace Diksha lines. So even though Bhaktivinoda had a Diksha line, he didn't even mention that. And though Jagannath Das Babaji had a Diksha line, he never mentions that. And Gorkishore had a Diksha line, he doesn't mention that either. He just traced Shiksha line instead. So he emphasized the Shiksha more. So that was a demonstration of the more emphasis on Harinam and Shiksha than on the Diksha. However, then again in the Gaudiya Math, after Bhaktisiddhanta, again they emphasize Diksha again. So we get this, kind of dual attitude towards it, and we get the emphasis on Diksha again. In spite of the fact that there's no longer, the Siddha Pranali is not carried on with Bhaktisiddhanta and others, still the emphasis on Diksha is there. So looks a little bit contrary to our actual practice or whatever. Anyway, that's the situation where the Diksha gets emphasized. Okay.
This we see, as you are saying, that one of the main reasons why Diksha lines got emphasized later on, I mean to say, why Diksha lines were emphasized before Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Because he didn't have any other process. There was no Harinam. So if you wanted to be a Vaishnava, you had to worship the deity. To worship the deity, you need Diksha. So it was necessary at that time. And of course, that's why the scriptures say you have to take initiation. And there's so many quotations, Diksha is necessary, because from the point of view of previous to Lord Chaitanya, that was the process.
And between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's period to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also, you said that the Diksha lines got emphasized.
Yeah.
That was because the Raganuga sadhana was...
that's one reason. I would suspect that's the reason. They don't. No one says directly, but I would think that's why they do emphasize, because it is through those Diksha gurus they also got the siddhas, the Sarup, etc. Yeah.
So that shows that the real reason one is accepting a guru is to learn the Raganuga sadhana. That means in such situations. It
was, at that time, yeah. Well, it's supposed to be, but theoretically. But for many people, this became again, like even in ISKCON, it becomes more or less a status symbol. You take initiation, so you got initiation, and you're in this group, or it may be traditional. So family got initiated, so I get initiated by this guru, etc. So also those reasons are also there. Yes. Some are more serious, they would take that, but then some would get and they wouldn't practice also. So that's why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was not in favor of that method.
So it seems like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't want any sort of ritualistic practice.
Less ritualistic. Yeah.
Rather than just being status symbol or tradition, he wanted sort of people should be having emphasis on essence of what Diksha means actually.
Yeah. So even that Siddha Pranali also became more or less a status symbol. In other words, it's another sign of advancement that you get it, even if you don't practice it. So I mean, all these things become formalities. So that's his main reason, probably the formality of it did not indicate your advancement.
Now again we find that same formality or formal things, ritualistic things have become again the focus.
Yeah, so that's problematic when that happens, yeah? In other words, we define serious devotee by initiation. Someone asked me that question. I think Murli Shaman asked that question today on internet because we're discussing with Madhu Pandit about, Ritvik and all that sort of thing. So then he asked this, so in ISKCON it's a little bit difficult to get rid of the idea of initiation being an official type of status. Yeah. So we say, okay, you're a serious devotee if you take initiation, so that puts them in a certain status. And initiated devotees are considered like this, are serious, and the others are not like that. So we use initiation as a marker, a measure, which is inconvenient in one sense, but it's not always true, that's all. It can be, but it's not necessarily always true. It is, of course, serious in one sense, but then some people take for the wrong motives, or some people practice and stop practicing, so it's, it's flexible also.
Why not we also, along with the just like ISKCON wants differentiation between initiated and not initiated devotees, and you said that we cannot get away with the idea. So why not we then think about making the initiation criterias a little more proper, little more structured, little more standardized, little more emphasized, not just on the formality but on the essence.
Well, they try to do that. Therefore, some have tests. Some say you have to have a Bhakti Shastri. So at least you get the knowledge like that. Of course, even getting a degree is no test. Also, in one sense, it's in one sense serious because you did that. But in another sense, knowledge itself is not the only thing. So, it's difficult to standardize spiritual criteria in one sense. Huh? And then, of course, our process is that sometimes the guru doesn't know the disciple well, and he depends on testimony of other people. And then even that testimony may not be very, general because he doesn't sit with them all day long either. So it's rather difficult.
As like the tree structure of the devotees' care model, I think ISKCON is also talking on that.
Yeah.
That the guru may not be able to personally be available for so many thousands of disciples or whatever, in case if they are initiating that many. Then down the line there are devotees who actually take care. Those who know about the lives of devotees. Yeah. So while recommending, they definitely know if this candidate is actually qualified or not.
Yeah. So that's one method, way of doing it. Yeah.
So I think that's what
provided they go through that method, but then some people don't go through that method, so therefore that's also a little bit of a problem, or they get around the method somehow.
Yes. So that's what emphasizing only Diksha rather than emphasizing the quality of devotion service. That numbers, for example, emphasizing numbers, how many people are getting initiated through me.
Yeah. So that actually is a negative thing, because in Nectar devotion it says making disciples is not an anga of bhakti. So to measure your devotion by the number of devotees you make is not a criteria also.
Unless we go away with this kind of things, numbers instead of quality, then we will always lead up to this problem.
Yeah. Of course, we like to increase the number of devotees all the time. We like to increase the number of books, etc. But at the same time, we have to balance that with quality. And we have to see who are serious devotees and try to encourage them.
Guru Maharaj, Uttama Adhikari, he realizes Krishna, he sees Krishna everywhere. And he doesn't make any discrimination. But the Madhyama Adhikari, it is a functional thing for him to make discretions, or he also realizes that Krishna is there everywhere. What is the position?
Well, he doesn't have a direct realization of Krishna. He doesn't have prema, or even bhava. So therefore, or he could have bhava also. Even bhava is sometimes considered a madhyama. He makes a little distinction also. So that means their vision of the Lord in everything and containing everything is not a fixed vision. It is philosophically understood, but it is not an experience for him. So therefore, he often thinks in terms of demon, devotee, favorable, unfavorable, body, not body, etc. And he makes distinctions.
And is it not possible to have Raganaga without Siddha Pranali?
Yeah, it's possible also. That's a particular method which was started probably in Puri with Dhyan Chandra and Gopal Guru. And, he started, and his disciple was Gopal Guru, whose disciple was Dhyan Chandra, who wrote a little booklet on that. And that seemed to have started the whole process, though Rupa Goswami doesn't mention that process. And even Vishnu doesn't mention that process as such. They talk about your sarup, meditating on your sarup, but they do not talk about this Siddha Pranali process. They don't mention that ever, as far as I know. Rupa Goswami doesn't mention it. And even Vishnu doesn't mention it in Raghavatma Chandrika. He just says you can get your sarup from the Guru or from another great devotee, or internally it can be revealed. So it's not necessary that it has to come through those Diksha lines also. But that became an emphasis within the, Gaudiya Sampradaya.
Maharaj, we hear that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that Diksha is for one who has, he said Harinam Ashrita is more than a Dikshita. One who has taken shelter of a holy name is greater than one who has got Diksha, because he has just faith on the name. Mm-hmm. So in our bhakti, if we find that after a few years of practice, we are still not getting absorbed or faith on chanting, as a process, then should we go ahead and apply for second initiation so that we can at least engage in deity worship, and through that one day we expect that we get faith in holy name, and while doing that, is it okay then to reduce our 16 rounds, because now we are doing more deity worship?
Well, we see that in, for instance, Nectar devotion, that Rupa Goswami emphasizes that there are 5 important elements. Among them is deity worship. So, and that's a defense of having Diksha, because in general, our acharyas, they took Diksha and they also worship deities, even though they don't have to worship deities. They did so. So it's a favorable process to go along with chanting the holy name, definitely. And it is said that by Jiva Goswami that because the heart is restless of the devotee, therefore the Diksha process is there with deity worship, so that they can engage their senses and their mind, etc., practically speaking, in serving the deity. So it's a very good aid, definitely, because all people cannot completely concentrate on the holy names. Yeah, it's there.
Then, because now we are...
But doesn't justify that because I'm doing that, therefore I can stop chanting also.
No, I mean reducing, because now the time that as a grihastha one may have is limited. So now doing 2 hours of chanting and then also doing deity worship.
Well, probably they won't have that mentality. They'll probably just think that if I can chant my 16 rounds, that's okay, because if I have to do the deity worship also, it's going to be more. So then they probably wouldn't involve in the deity worship to that degree, and therefore sacrifice the chanting to the deity worship. Probably they would emphasize the chanting more than that, and maybe avoid the deity worship.
But then chanting, they're not able to put faith in that. They're not.
Yeah. Well, they should have some faith. Otherwise, why join Lord Chaitanya's movement? Of course, even that worship, they can simplify a lot. So it's not that you have to do everything exactly like Hari Bhakti Vilas or whatever. So there are simplified forms of worship. Some people do worship every day. They have a shalagram, and then they spend 10 minutes worshiping their shalagram, and that's it. So they do something at least, and they engage themselves that way. So it's not that you have to take hours to do it either.
But doing deity worship...
Oh, and the main process is you can never give up the chanting of the holy name in any process, whether it's doing samskars or deity worship or anything else. That accompanies everything else, so it has to be there in some cases.
Remember, doing deity worship is much more serious service, where one has to dedicate himself for serving the Lord. But having distraction there, it becomes seva prada, and it may lead to fall down also. People who cannot have control over the mind how they can involve themselves into deity worship with full concentration?
Well, that's why the Diksha is limited, unlike Harinam. And not everybody, we don't say everybody go out and get Diksha. So they have to have some high qualification. They have to be of a certain caliber before they take initiation, Diksha, and do deity worship. And then when they do the deity worship, then there's certain standards of purity, punctuality, etc., etc. So there are standards they have to follow if they're going to do deity worship. So if they cannot follow that standard, then they shouldn't do the deity worship. That's all.
Sure. Maharaj, sometimes we see that being in India, religiously, some of our devotees, even before coming to devotional service, they get this sacred ceremony, Upnayanam Sanskar.
Yeah.
And then after we start devotional service, we focus more on Harinam and then chanting Gayatri 3 times a day and all those things we stop. So especially after coming to devotional service, what should we do, I mean, with those rituals which we were following?
You were doing the rituals before?
Kind of chanting 3 times Gayatri and
with
then
Sandhya Vandana?
we used to do.
Okay,
We used to do, but kind of got stopped after.
Well, one can continue. Now, the thing, there's no problem in doing that, and that's how they did it before. Previously, that's what they did. Like Lord Chaitanya got his Upanayana when he's 5 years old, and he continued his process. I think when he took sannyas, he gave it up, because Mayavadi sannyasis don't do karmas anymore. So Vaishnavas, of course, do that. So even like a Vaishnava sannyasi in Sri Sampradaya, they will probably continue their Sandhya Vandana or whatever. So there's, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says that generally the Grihastas should continue their karmas. Even if they're serious Vaishnavas, they continue their karmas because they're working in society, set a good example for others. Yeah. So in the very basic definition of bhakti, we find jnana karma dhyanavritam, that pure bhakti should not be covered or obstructed by karma and jnana. And then in relation to that, the commentary, I think, of Jiva is that karma means nitya naimintic activities, the karmas, so it should not obstruct the bhakti. So that doesn't mean you stop the activities, that's made clear in the commentary also, but you can do the activities, but at the same time, you should not be attached to them and think if I don't do them, I am wrong, or I'm faulty, or I commit sin, etc. So then the reason for doing them would be set an example for other people who are not qualified for bhakti. That would be the reason. So in other words, simply to teach others. So that would be the reason for doing it. Not that because if I don't do it, I lose something in my bhakti. Because bhakti itself is independent. So also in the definition of bhakti says, as long as one does not have faith in the process of pure bhakti, then one should do the karmas. And then commentary there also is nitya naimitya karmas. You must do them. When you get the faith in bhakti, you're not obliged to do them. Yet you can do them, as I said, if you're grihasta, and to set an example for others. Now, but then you're not obliged to do them also, that's the idea. So it's not that you must do them. So in certain circumstances you may not do them also. So particularly like the Babajis, they renounce all those things. They don't have no obligation to anything. So it depends on the person. But generally the Grihastas do follow. But there may be circumstances where they may not follow also.
Maharaj, at the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this process of Diksha got redefined, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur makes a statement that this verse Trinadapi Sunishena is the Siddha Pranali mantra for the devotees. So how do you understand that?
Well, I think, and Gorky Shorta says, your Swarup will be revealed by chanting Hare Krishna. So Siddhantically that's correct. Everything is in Hare Krishna. So what do we say? The name is non-different from Krishna. So in the name, there's Krishna's form, qualities, activities, rasa, everything is in there. So technically, Hare Krishna contains everything. Of course, you can say that the Diksha mantra also contains everything because it's also got the name of Krishna there as well. And so even without the Siddha Pranali, if you do your deity worship properly, or you were to do your Hare Krishna chanting properly, then you could reveal Swarup. And this is, of course, this is also so for even people doing Vaidhi Bhakti in other sampradayas. They don't do Raganuga Bhakti, they don't get Siddha Pranali, but do they get a Sarup in the spiritual world? Yeah. Worship Vishnu, then you get a form in the spiritual world. So they don't do any Siddha Pranali for that. So in other sampradayas, just doing Vaidhi Bhakti, not even worshipping Krishna, they get a Sarup eventually. So the idea of this meditating on your Sarup is a method of quickening the process. So you can concentrate more on one particular rasa and one particular service in that rasa. That's all. That's its function in one sense. So then it makes it easier to go in that one direction and concentrate in that way. But even if you don't do that, then eventually there's an arrangement. You get Salokya, Sarupya, or whatever in the spiritual world. So somehow or other, Krishna makes arrangements for everybody. So our main process then is through Harinam, and therefore that's why Gorky Short says your Sarup is revealed through the holy name. Now, even if your Sarup is revealed through Siddha Pranali, that's only a sadhana. If you don't practice it, then what happens when will you get bhava or not? If you don't practice it, maybe you don't get bhava, and so therefore you never realize it. So it's not a guarantee also because you get Siddha Pranali that therefore you do get a form and Krishna is obliged to give it to you. No. It depends on your own sadhana and your own advancement, your own devotion, your own development of bhava and prema. So it doesn't depend upon it. It's a tool, we can say. It's a process, but it's not that it guarantees anything. It makes it easier. Just like in college or whatever. If you concentrate on a particular degree, rather than say, okay, I'll just go and study. Well, okay, you can eventually pass and do something. But if you're more particular and say, okay, I'm going to concentrate on engineering, fine, then you get a little more enthusiastic to concentrate in that direction and choose the right subjects for that. And even you can go more specialized than that and say, I'm going to choose engineering with engineering. What are branches there? Some electrical engineering or civil engineering or mechanical engineering or, I don't know, computer science or whatever. You concentrate on that. And even within that, then you can go with the thing. Computer science will do the hardware part, or we'll do the software programming, or we'll do this, or we'll do communications within the software or whatever. And if you make your more goal particular, then more likely that's where you're going to end up. Quicker. If you start out general, then of course you get the degree. Then after that you can start thinking, okay, then I'll be more particular. So it takes longer.
So ultimately in the path of bhakti, sincerity and seriousness and the essence-seeking mentality is what actually helps. Ultimately, whether this tool or that tool or whether we do this.
Saragrahi.
Saragrahi. You bless all of us, Maharaj, so that we can become Saragrahi. Very good. Next, we will go to the next verse. Let's start 6.
Okay, so verse 6. Jistaisva bhava janitarva pusascha doshaya na prakratatnamiha bhakta janasya pasyat gangambasam na kalu budbuddha fena pankaya brahma dravatvam apagachiti niradharmai. So this is concerning sadhu ninda. The devotee should not see another devotee as a material being seeing faults in his body or faults produced by karma and his nature. The spiritual nature of the Ganga is not dissipated if the water is contaminated by foam, bubbles, or mud. Of course, we apply the same principle to the holy name. The holy name looks like it's a material sound because we can hear it with our ear, or Tamagun people can chant it or whatever, and they will say it's all Tamagun, but actually the holy name is pure in all cases, but it appears to be covered because of the covering of the particular jivas, or our particular covering. So in the same way, the devotee also is of that nature. Of course, we have to see who is a devotee, first of all. We're defining, of course, a devotee is a pure devotee, and it'd be maybe, we could say a pure devotee would start with the Madhyama, not the Kanishta. So the Madhyama or the Uttama. So they definitely have that Bhakti Shakti to some degree manifested in the jiva. So that has to be respected in all cases. So if we judge the devotee not in terms of that bhakti, but in terms of their body, then that becomes offense. In other words, we will judge the devotee as grade not on his bhakti, but on his physical appearance or whatever. then that becomes offensive. Huh? So, we respect the Vaishnava for certain reasons. That is, he has spiritual knowledge. He's gained knowledge through his association, so therefore we have to respect him for that. If we respect him, then we can get that knowledge also. He shows mercy. He's willing to teach us. He's willing to impart whatever Shakti he has to another jiva, and whatever realization, of course, he has. So, if he has these things, then we should respect the person as a Vaishnava. So, the opposite, of course, is called aparad. So, we do that. If we disrespect the devotees, this creates a serious problem, because then we're also cut off from the mercy, the knowledge, and any realization. And we may say, well, I just disrespected that devotee, the other devotee, so I'll get the knowledge from this devotee, but I'll disrespect that devotee. But it doesn't quite work like that, because Krishna sees everybody, and he sees everything, so therefore he knows your intentions also. So generally we start disrespecting one devotee, somehow the connection gets lost between the other devotees also, so that we end up with nothing. In spite of the fact we may try to get knowledge from another person, and we don't disrespect him, we disrespect another one. So, therefore, we have to be very careful of Vaishnava aparad. So, it's a cause of advancement, that is devotee association, and if we disrespect the devotee, then we cut that association, basically, through the aparads. So, I mentioned there about bodily defects. So that's one thing. The person is sick, or the person has one leg, or he's blind, or whatever like that. So those are bodily defects due to past karmas or whatever. Some people in terms of birth. So they'll say, okay, he's lower birth, so we don't have to respect him so much as the brahmana, one who's a brahmana, etc. So that's another material designation that's offensive. If we see the sinful activities of a person before he accepted bhakti, and we criticize him for that, then that's also considered to be an offense. And even if there are traces of bad quality at the moment, we criticize him for that, it's considered offense, because we all understand that everybody is going through a process of purification, and there are anartas in everybody up into bhava stage, so therefore we can criticize everybody. But we don't do that because we understand that the good quality is they're practicing bhakti, and we respect that, and that these qualities, if they practice the bhakti, they will gradually dissipate and disappear, so we don't unnecessarily criticize these elements. Of course, if the bad qualities become very prominent, then it is a matter of concern, because generally it should be the opposite. The bad quality should be decreasing all the time. If they start increasing, then it looks like there's a problem in the bhakti itself. It's not working properly. There's some fault in the way the bhakti is being performed. So that's a matter of concern. So that can be pointed out with not being an offense at all. But if one without good reason points out faults, then that becomes offense also. And even if the devotee commits a sin, not all the time, but a sin, and he corrects himself, that also should not be criticized. And that is made very clear in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, even if you commit the worst sin, not just durachar, but sudurachar, very bad sin, still, Krishna says, sadur eva samantavya. He should be considered to be sadhu. He is still a devotee. And Krishna says that. And so he expects everybody else to say that, also to consider that he's still a devotee. He's not, because of the sinful activity, he is not to be rejected as a devotee. So he has to be respected as a devotee also. So, of course, this is, again, condition is that he's not continuously doing sinful activities, just like he hasn't continuously or increasing his bad qualities. If that is happening, then it's a different case. Huh? So in that particular verse it says that he quickly corrects himself. So that means he doesn't commit those activities again. So therefore, this is considered to be accidental sin, and it's overlooked by Krishna and should be overlooked by the devotees also. So he's still a devotee. Huh? So these are the particular things that have to be seen when we think of devotees and avoid sadhu ninda. Of course, we also know that sadhu ninda is the mad elephant offense. So all the offenses, this is, we say, the most destructive. The devotee cultivates bhakti with great care, and if we do it properly, then the seed of bhakti grows. And if we commit the sadhu ninda, the Vaishnava aparad, which is like the mad elephant, then the elephant can come and stamp on the creeper, and then it's finished. So whatever effort you put into growing bhakti can go down to zero. And not in all cases it'll go to zero, but at least it gets harmed. And according to the seriousness of the aparad, it may have greater or lesser effects as well. So, therefore, the Chaitanya Charitamrita warns us that therefore you beware of this aparad as the mad elephant offense, because it can very heavily damage the bhakti. So the problem with that is, the seriousness of that is, once the bhakti is damaged, there is no taste to do bhakti, or very little taste. If there's very little taste for doing bhakti, the hopes of recovering are also very little. Because the only way in which you can recover from the aparad is to do bhakti, to chant the holy name continuously. And if you have no taste for it, you don't do it. So therefore you can't recover. So one gets stuck in that position once the bhakti gets destroyed, the very little taste, therefore we can't get out of that position, and we end up with no little taste or whatever like that. So it becomes a dangerous position for the devotee. So therefore one has to avoid. So the offense is so serious that even unintentional aparad has effect. As in the case of, Rupa Goswami. So he laughed, and then some devotee got offended, thinking he was mocking him. So that then Rupa Goswami's bhakti decreased. And he didn't even know, because he wasn't laughing at the person at all, but the devotee got upset. So therefore that created an effect on him. So that is the seriousness of aparad somehow or other. So even unintentional has an effect. However, it's very difficult for us to avoid the unintentional when we don't know. And it's simply being in the material world has that possibility. So there's always that danger. So that's one imperfection of the material world, even for our praying bhakta. So unintentionally somebody will get offended, and then he gets some result on that. So it's a dangerous place, the material world. So we can't do too much about that. We just have to be very careful as much as possible. On the other hand, the effect is not so serious as the intentional aparad. So that's basically when we talk about the sadhu ninda, we have to be careful of the intentional aparad, where consciously we criticize with some malicious intent or whatever, envious, malicious intent or whatever, on these grounds or whatever, on any of these grounds or any other ground also. So that becomes quite damaging to our devotional service. So in this particular work, which is very short, he's actually given a whole verse to this, just to the Vaishnava aparad, because it is a serious thing. And of course he's also mentioned in the previous one, which is respect here. So therefore one has to avoid the disrespect to the devotees of all categories, and therefore even the kanishta, one does not disrespect. And even those super low kanishta, who maybe get slight aparadis or maybe even greater aparadis, but they're chanting the holy name, one still gives mental respect. Prabhupada said even these sahajiyas and whatever, we give them some mental respect. They're chanting Hare Krishna, so give them some mental respect at least, that we don't associate with them at all. So in this way we have to be very careful in our association with others. So we respect all devotees of some sort, and then we have to avoid the aparad, the Vaishnava aparad or the sadhu ninda, because it has very serious effects on our devotion. So this is important for the Madhyamadhikari. The Kanishta is not aware of aparad, so therefore it's also more dangerous for him because he can always be committing aparads, either intentionally or unintentionally, whatever, because he doesn't know how to treat devotees, etc. So, and doesn't respect them also, so it's in a dangerous position. So the Madhyama has awareness, so therefore it's possible for him to advance much quicker due to this knowledge.
Someone may come to know about aparad also, but still they continue doing it. So then what is to be done? Like you said that Kanishta may not even know, but then people may come to know about that hurting devotees, etc. is sort of...
Well, if he does know, but he still commits aparad, then he's probably not even a Madhyama. Because a Madhyama associates with devotees and respects devotees of three types, and he treats them in different ways, but he respects them all. So if he doesn't do that, then, and he's doing sadhu ninda all the time, then he's not even at the Madhyam categories. And we can say he's not even in the Kanishta category if he's deliberately doing it, because then he can't even advance to the Madhyam category.
What's the remedy for Vaishnava?
Continually chanting the holy name, but won't have attraction for it, so therefore it's difficult to get out of that position once the aparads are done. But it's like the example is given of the jaundice, and when you have jaundice, serious jaundice, then the cure is the sugar candy, but the sugar candy does not taste sweet, so you don't want to take it. So therefore the possibility of cure is less because it tastes so bad. But if you're very intelligent, then you will take it, in spite of that it doesn't taste good. So it requires some intelligent person to actually, if he has committed aparad, then to carry out the process, even though he's not attracted to it. And by continually doing that, by taking the sugar candy, in spite of the fact that he doesn't want to, eventually he gets a little cured, and he gets a little taste. And he can taste the sugar a little more, and then he gets more cured. He can taste it a little more like this. So gradually he can improve if he follows the process. Like the doctor says, do it, he'll do it. But if we're very attached to our senses and we say, I don't trust that doctor, it tastes bad, so it's nonsense, so I won't do it, so then he doesn't get cured. So if a person is like that, okay, you should get rid of your position, you should chant Hare Krishna, I don't want to do it, I don't feel like doing it, and then he's lost, he won't improve.
Also, it is said that begging forgiveness from the devotees is quick way to
I
overcome.
forgot that. So the process is, of course, one is chanting. The other is that one has to, especially if unconscious, we don't know. It's very difficult to do that. I guess we could just generally apply for mercy from all devotees, or try to figure out some relation like Rupa Goswami and find out who it was. Otherwise, the process is that one should go, if we know, then it's conscious, obviously we know, then, or somebody informs us, then we go to that devotee and we apologize with sincerity. And then the devotee usually accepts. If he doesn't accept, then of course we still chant Hare Krishna. So it depends on approaching the person. And Vishnu Chakravarti says, if you don't follow the process with the excuse that he wasn't offended anyway, so I don't have to do it, then that creates further aparad. So, or if he gets some other excuse, then still, if he doesn't follow the process, then it gets worse, the aparad gets worse, and his taste for the name decreases again.
Maharaj, in such cases I have seen when two devotees offend each other, generally it becomes an ego battle. Unnecessarily, like sometimes fight happens. I've seen in ashram or any other place. Like because of, it could be a small thing, but unnecessarily the ego battle begins. And then it becomes a very big problem. Unnecessarily, like, they're quarreling over issues which are not even, worth much. So it becomes an ego problem, and they're not even realizing that it's becoming Vaishnava aparad, they're hurting each other. So is it not that in general devotees should cultivate humility and mannerisms, good mannerisms to even conduct oneself with each other?
Well, that is, I think I pointed that out, that intrinsic to bhakti was this idea of humility. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya says in chanting, then the accompanying instruction was to be humble than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree, and give respect to all others and not respect for oneself. So if one does the chanting in that way, it becomes effective. And then one doesn't commit these aparads and so many other things. In fact, one doesn't only commit aparads, but one respects all living energies, not just Vaishnavas. So, but if one doesn't do that, then one can chant, but this sort of slower process of anartha and vritti. Because we're still hanging on to our false ego and our anarthas, etc. And of course, if it becomes extreme, then it's the 10th offense, that in spite of hearing all the glories of the holy name, we've refused to give up our material attachments. And then we can't advance at all.
So like we have seen, department head is pointing out to some another devotee, this is to be done this way or not to be done this way. So then unnecessarily the ego battles begin. It could be just a simple thing. The correction is offered, but then the correction is not taken, and from then on, the whole tension builds up and communication is not happening, and so many problems happen. How do we solve this kind of?
Well, possibly it's the way we communicate also. So we have to understand perhaps the mentality of the particular person. Also, we have to explain the reason for the particular instruction or restriction or whatever, why we do it this way and not that way, and the problems with doing it another way. So if we explain it properly, maybe we have a better chance of person accepting it, that's all. Well, then they have to work on their own false ego, I suppose. That's all they can do. And meditate on the verse, Trinadapi Sunichinam more. As I said, ultimately the process of purification is bhakti and chanting the holy name, and if we do it with that attitude, then of course we get very great effect. If we don't do it, then the effect is much less, and the anarthas will disappear at a slower rate.
Guru Maharaj, usually we see that there are so many guidelines for relationship with Vaishnavas. But being in this material world and material body and our own vasanas, we find it difficult to really have the relationship. In some places, even devotees quote saying that this is Vaishnava etiquette, you should not argue with, you have to just simply listen and carry forward, and which may not be rational or reasonable sometimes. And we see that some devotees, they don't do visible chanting. They just come for a certain amount of service and just go back, but they try to dominate, thinking that... how to handle these sort of situations without doing aparat?
Well, see, it's all individual cases. We can't make a general thing, but we should maybe have general standards, and we encourage everybody to follow the general standards. And I think nobody can take offense to that also, the general standards. There may be exceptional cases, of course, why you can't do this or can't do that in a certain way. Nevertheless, the basic principles should be followed. So we encourage everybody to follow those principles. And beyond that, if they can do more, fine, we encourage them to do more. And if they can't accept it, well, ultimately it's not, we don't lose anything, they lose. So we don't have to be too attached. If they follow, fine. If they don't follow, it's not our loss, it's their loss. So that's all. It's ultimately for their benefit.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, sometimes devotees keep perceptions about other devotees and don't have good feelings towards certain Vaishnavas, Maharaj. So that time, is it not important that first they start to take steps to repair that relationships? Because if the relationship is not good, the good feelings towards Vaishnavas are not there, Bhakti also doesn't, they can't practice it properly.
Yeah. Well, in general, we have to avoid these bad feelings or whatever, which is also an anartha. The general instruction is you see all living entities as equal, sama. We should be sama or whatever like that. And if it's not sama, then we know there is duality in our vision, and the duality is caused by false ego, etc. So it's all symptoms of our thinking in terms of the material world, all of which is unfavorable for the development of bhakti. So if we constantly have these type of feelings of like and dislike, whatever, then we have to understand that we're still very attached to our material body. So it's not favorable for advancement. So what is the solution? One, of course, is the process of bhakti. If we do enchant Hare Krishna along with the Trinada Bhisunnichena properly, then those type of attitudes and the false ego and the pride will gradually disappear and very quickly disappear. And if we don't do it properly, the chanting will happen, but it'll be much slower. And in the process of that, we may commit offenses, so then it'll be more slow. So if we follow the process of bhakti properly, then these things should not arise. So if we constantly is arising, we have to be introspective in our own sadhana and see what is wrong with our sadhana, what is our attitude in our sadhana. And if we can correct it, fine, then we can make some progress.
Guru Maharaj, is there any particular way of reading others' mind so that it will be easily for us to make ourselves?
Well, we practice mystic yoga probably. Of course, Krishna also says, I give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. So in devotional service, whatever intelligence is necessary for your progress, Krishna will guide you in that direction. So we can say that's not mystic process, but it's directly through bhakti that we get some sort of understanding of how to do things. So we rely on Krishna's mercy ultimately, and that should handle everything. We can never figure out all the intentions of everybody in this material world. It's impossible to do. Only Supreme Lord can do that. But whatever is necessary for our devotional advancement, Krishna will make arrangement for that. So we get some sort of awareness.
Maharaj, I think this question also arises, as far as I understand in my experience, that we have to know the intention of person or what is going through, because they are not honest with devotees. The people are not honest. They sort of cheat people and keep something inside, say something else, mean something else.
Yeah. Well, if that's there, then this is another anartha called kutinati and all this, duplicity and whatever. So they show one face, one thing, and they show something else. So that's also not one type of anartha, which arises again from false ego or whatever, and all sorts of other problems in their mind and their whatever. So it is definitely not advantageous for devotional service. And if they can't get rid of it, then they can't really advance. As I said, if you hold on to these. So if they are serious devotees, they have to somehow be willing at least to try to give it up. If they're not willing, then it's rather hopeless. They can't really advance, which means they're not really sincere, ultimately. No? Because the whole process of bhakti depends on the idea that we surrender everything to Krishna. And if we're not willing to give up our false ego and whatever, then it's a difficult process. It doesn't work. We're going in this direction, trying to go in that direction. We don't go anywhere.
So how to give up the fear to surrender? Basically, then I understand that ultimately it becomes...
Well, it's gradual. No, obviously, it's going to be fear in all cases because we're conditioned in the material world, and therefore surrender completely is very difficult for us. So Krishna doesn't expect that, but we start out with a little faith. Within that, there's a little surrender, a little idea. And at least we're intellectually prepared to give up things in favor of Krishna and sacrifice everything to Krishna. We cannot do it practically, but at least intellectually accept it as something, as a goal. And then gradually it develops more and more.
Last question.
Maharaj, you were mentioning about simplified form of deity worship for grihasthas who may not have so much time. So Maharaj, does it also require second initiation?
Well, pancharatrically it does, if we want to follow pancharatra. So I would think that previously, generally, they would do that. They wouldn't worship the deity unless they got their diksha, previous to Lord Chaitanya. After Lord Chaitanya, I don't know what they've done within the Gaudiya Sampradaya, but I would assume generally it's the same thing. They would have to take diksha if they wanted to worship the deity. And the deities were generally in the temples, so that was a thing. I don't think that house deities were so common. I'm not sure, but I think maybe not so common as having deities in the house. Maybe it's an ISKCON thing. I'm not sure. I don't know. Is it an ISKCON thing only?
Usually when they have a deity in the house, then the house itself is treated as temple.
Yeah, but they have diksha. Yeah, they have diksha. Like I know in Sri Sambhara, they have shalagrams in the house and whatever like that. They do that. So that's there. But it's all connected with diksha. If they don't have the diksha, they're not going to do that worship. I think in the house. Yeah, what I'm saying is, yeah. But so I'm thinking of ISKCON particularly. Now, as for other Gaudiyas, I don't know what they did with Gaur Nitai, whether they required diksha for that or not. But I think generally in the temples they did, at least in the temples, like you have Lord Chaitanya temple, the here Mahaprabhu, generally it was carried out by the Brahmins, the worship, and they had diksha also. And we'll see that generally the lines of Goswamis with temples were carried on by Brahmins also. They were just all diksha lines, and the diksha and the whatever was carried on. So they did it. So, but as for house deities, I don't know in the Gaudiya Sampradaya whether it was common or not, whether it's Radha Krishna or Gaur Nitai. So now in ISKCON, I say it's a little bit different. So like Jagannath and Gaur Nitai are considered more informal. So a lot of people worship them without initiation, etc. So they go through that. Of course, by initiation, I'm talking about second initiation, but even first initiation, sometimes they're worshipping as well. Without first initiation, even they're doing it. So it happens in ISKCON, which we can justify in one sense out of that. But pancharatrically, I think there was some standard previously, but now we think less standard.
But it is tradition in Indian culture that everybody has some puja room and they do aarti, they do their way of naivedyam and other things. How do we take...
But do they have diksha for that?
Many they don't take even diksha that comes in the family tradition.
Well, in the family tradition, generally they have some sort of diksha, yeah? We won't call it Vaishnava diksha in our sense, but there may be a Vaishnava mantra they get. The smartas also do worship, and they also get some mantra, and they get through that through diksha also. So,
like my mother had Sri Vaishnava diksha. Then my sister and all, they carry out that same worship. They have not taken any diksha.
they didn't? Okay.
They do carry out that worship.
Okay, without the diksha.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, probably it's a corruption of the tradition, that they should have taken diksha, yeah? Because what's going to happen next generation?
They will not be doing because they don't.
Yeah. So gradually it dies out. So generally they connect them with diksha and they keep the tradition up. Even if they're not Vaishnavas, they would have a diksha probably for the worship.
But in village they don't know who is Vaishnava also.
Yeah.
But they are worshipping themselves like demigods.
But do they have diksha for that? No. Yeah. So this is not shastric. It's just tradition only.
No, but they have some sort of parampara. After this son, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, so they have their own diksha or whatever, whether they're using mantras or not or whatever, but in terms of Pancharatra I'm speaking, it's a little different. Yeah, Pancharatra. Yeah.
His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Maharaj, you can speak.